Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. I am super excited for tonight's conversation because, as some of y'all know, I do have a teenage child, and we're going to be talking about parenting and teen and young adult mental health. I should say he's a young adult. He's 18. He's an adult. He graduated Friday, so like absolutely a grown
Woo.
up. But that's hard. That's hard for me to say. But I am really excited for the conversation tonight, and I am joined by Mendi Barron. Mendi, thank you so much for joining me today, just for taking the time out and being here. I know it's a little bit late for you, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, Mendi is a licensed clinical social worker and the founder and CEO of several behavioral health treatment centers across the country, including Mariah Behavioral Health, Ignite Teen Treatment, and Eden Center for Eating Disorders. He has worked with teens, young adults, and families for years, offering both clinical expertise and a unique creative approach to supporting mental health. He has been a therapist, speaker, program developer, and even a rock musician, boxer, and dad of five. So he brings a wide range of personal and professional insight to this conversation tonight. He is passionate about helping families navigate the challenges of mental health, especially when it comes to parenting adolescents and young adults. And I'm really looking forward to, like I said, digging into all of that with him today. So if you are here and you are hoping to connect with him, I've got links to website, Instagram, LinkedIn, all those things, TikTok, YouTube, everything on there. So feel free to click through on any of these. If you do click through, make sure that you like a couple of posts, leave a comment on a couple of things. That's what helps that discoverability. So feel free to click into all of those. So while we're kind of getting ourselves set up here, can you just share a little bit about what led you to specializing in teen and young adult mental health care?
Yeah, being a pain in the ass teen was was my introduction. But no, in all seriousness, yeah, I put my parents through their paces. And at some point, I discovered that I had sort of a knack for giving advice or guidance to my peers, and met somebody who was in the profession who recommended I pursue it, and I ended up doing that. I think working with teens is interesting because they know everything and can't be taught anything, and they're brilliant and all understanding. Um, but at the same time, if you can get something through there, you can really see drastic change. A small
Mm.
shifts here, but you get the advantage of seeing it. Not that I've written off adults, but you don't always get to see the change. You don't always get the reward of being like, okay, I did this and this happened. For teens, although they are infinitely more challenging, when you can succeed, you get the kind of cheat code. You get to see a little bit of the results, and so that kind of drew me to that field, and I've been in it ever since, pretty much.
I like that. It's interesting, like just the you were a pain in the ass when you were a teenager, and also you were good at giving your peers advice. Like that's not something that you see every day because sometimes you give advice from the experiences that you've had, right? So it's interesting. How often did you find that your advice worked out the right way versus caused any sort of additional bullshit happening on the other side?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, for the most part, it seemed to help. I was pretty good at like also like kind of like people watching, analyzing, seeing where people were going. So relationship advice became a sort of a thing, and maybe a bit of a pickup trick for me. I don't know. But analyzing people.
Yeah.
But to me, it was about helping. I'm the oldest of 11 kids, so the oldest is usually called the
Wow.
lifeguard. My dad's a rabbi, so I kind of watched him, and I grew up watching people come for advice, for guidance, and people who usually are attracted to religious figures for guidance and advice tend to have a lot of their own struggles.
Hmm.
And so I was privy to a lot of things that maybe other kids wouldn't have had the opportunity, and really seeing somebody help. And so kind of those elements came together, and I did my best to emulate. But for example, what got me into the field, the specific story, I don't know if you have time, but I was a teenager. I was sort of doing my own thing. I was in another country, and there was a bunch of other young folks, and every like Saturday night they go clubbing, and most of them had struggled tremendously with a lot of different issues: addiction, eating disorder, sexual abuse, different things that they
Mm.
were really struggling with, and their parents had kind of shipped them off to a private school to quote deal with it. Um, and my job was to basically keep them out of running into the street while we waited for a bus
Mm.
back to our location, and that was just like my gig. 3 4 people trying to keep them sane. And so a gentleman pulls up. It's like 2 or 3 in the morning, and he rolls down his window and says, "Everything okay?" And I said, "Dude, this is typical, nothing unusual." I was 17, and he says, "Well, I'm a social worker. Can I talk to them?" And I said, I don't mind." And so he went and talked to each of them, and he called me back and he said, "You should know that each one of them attribute the fact that they're alive right now to you." And he said, "You
Wow.
should perhaps," right. He said, "You should probably consider a career in this." I never met the guy again, never heard of the guy again, and something clicked. And I was like, this is what I want to pursue. So it was interesting, how that played out.
Yeah. So at 17, you had this just like kind of
It was
epiphany.
weird.
Yeah. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild to have already touched that many lives. First of all, at 17 is a huge accomplishment in and of itself. But then to have someone recognize that and verbalize that to you as well.
Yeah, and the thing about teens is like that was my epiphany that got me to focus and get on track. And I'm in my work. That's what we're always trying to do.
Yeah.
Is find the aha, find the thing that they can click with, find something that they see passion in. Right, like today's day and age. Back in the day, you worked in the farm, you were drafted. You worked in the factory. Your future was pretty much set. As you move forward, you went to college, you became a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, whatever. Nowadays, our kids have no idea
Yeah.
where they're going. They have no goals for the future. They don't have any vision for the future. They go to college not knowing what they want, and the dropout rate is incredible. And so if you don't have something to focus on and you don't have a passion you can pursue, what drives you to get up in the morning and focus and do the things the way you're supposed to? Nothing. So it's, it really is that sort of trying to replicate that aha moment for other people that can, really set them up.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Did you ever consider becoming a rabbi following your dad's footsteps?
I'm about 15 tattoos, too many for that. The rest of my siblings, they became rabbis and stuff like that. I do a different form of outreach, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
But tremendous respect I often work with my dad on cases. I walk a fine line because I know the ins and outs of my community.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of respect and trust from people there because they know I'm not going to push people in another direction. And then I have trust and acceptance from the general population. So it's kind of an interesting line to walk that puts me in a unique place.
Yeah, yeah. And just to have that kind of that trust is nice without having to go in a direction you didn't want to
go. Correct. And be able to like speak the lingo without people knowing you can speak the lingo is also kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now you do a lot. So your clinical work and music and boxing and your spirituality. How do you balance that? And do you find that any of those help you connect more with your clients?
Also, good question. You got a lot of good questions. So I have ADHD, which means that I can do all of it at once. Not always excellent, but it actually helps me to jump from one thing to another and then jump back. So for me, having a multitude of different pursuits is good because if I take boxing the whole time, then it starts to lose interest. But you shift, you variate, and you learn to play your skills where they're at. For me, for example, boxing was very unique because boxing it is the ultimate form of mindfulness, right? If you have ADHD and you try to be mindful and focus on the moment, it's very hard. But you have to be in the moment in the ring or you'll get knocked out. So you can't get distracted. Your mind can't be in other places. You can't be planning something in your head and thinking about work. Or if you're not there, you're on the floor. And so that's really cool. Music is a form of outlet. You can, express yourself in a way that maybe you couldn't express normally, especially in the workplace. It's very hard to express. You have to present different personas in different places. And so this gives you a chance to be more authentic to whatever you feel, right? At work, there's a persona. With your clients, there's a persona. And then there's, for me, I feel the actual ultimate persona is the musician. Because that was really always what it was. So just for me, finding that balance is what gives me balance, playing between the different elements.
Yeah. I was just having a conversation with my 11-year-old who also has ADHD, but we were talking about, because I was trying to get him to focus, and it's really hard for him to focus on anything. And I was like, baby, I know it's hard. We got like 5 minutes before we have to leave. So I need you to stand still and brush your hair. Like, I just need you to stand still and brush your hair. And he's like, you don't understand, Mom. I can't stand still. If I stand still, then I'm just going to explode. And I'm like, I know. However, we don't have time.
Well, I always kind of liken it like, the whole, I'm not a big like Thor person, but when I watch movies, I see certain things that I can resonate with. Right? When he doesn't learn to harness that energy, it's all over the place. It's explosive.
Yeah.
But the minute he learns to harness it, it's a powerful tool that almost nobody else can use. Like, it's a weapon only he can use. And ADHD people see it as a diagnosis. For me, it's a superpower that you just have to learn how to harness. Once you can do a heck of a lot more than other people, a lot faster.
Yeah.
And it becomes something really unique.
Yeah. And he's most of the time he's wonderful. Most of the time he's great. He gets ready and everything, but boy, some days it's really hard. And it just happened to be one of those days, and it just happened to be like a couple of days ago that happened. I was like, yeah,
it's not easy.
I get it.
No, not at all.
But we did also in that same conversation, I was like, whenever you're multitasking, you're not really multitasking, you're multi-half-assing, and he hates cussing. And so he went, ooh, and I was like, okay, well, put it in good place terms and put the ash in there instead of ass, and then we can have the conversation. But he definitely likes to be doing a bunch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a true crime story that fascinates you?
So I was thinking about that because you told me you might ask that question. Yeah. I'm going to use a not true crime story, but there are many true crime stories based off this. Have you ever seen the movie Split?
I don't think I have.
Split is about a gentleman who has dissociative identity disorder, which is what people call multiple personality disorder. And it's a fascinating interplay between unfortunate victims who've had their own trauma, a younger man who's had his own trauma that has caused him to evolve into 24 different personalities that are quite different. And then a therapist who really fails to hold boundaries and gets way too invested and ends up being sort of the catalyst for it. But I find those kind of stories fascinating because when it comes to DID or dissociative identity disorder and somebody's mental health conditions, a lot of times we look at criminals and like criminals, right? They killed, they murdered, they maimed, they did whatever. They're bad people. And it's true in a lot of senses. And then we'll look at sociopaths and, Dahmer and other ones who kill without thinking and without any sort of remorse. And we go, they're evil, which they are. And lacking the remorse makes it more so. But then when you get to some mental health conditions like dissociative, they're not even in control. Other personalities literally take over. And some will remember, some won't. It's almost like you're arresting somebody for something somebody else did almost. And so those kind of cases fascinate me in terms of how we navigate that. I mean, I've seen a lot of cases where they want to claim insanity, they want to claim this, they want to claim that. But when it comes to DID, it's actually quite unique. And also as a therapist, it's quite unique because, again, you're not treating one person. Yeah. You have multiple iterations of a person, and each one has their own backstory, their own feelings, their own emotions, their own expressions, and it's a hell of a job. So that interests me, in terms of true crime. And I think most of the shows glamorize it or they overblow it, but that concept to me and seeing how it plays out in a lot of situations, even in current times, you're like, oh wait, that's a little bit different. Fascinates me.
Yeah. Is that movie pretty accurate to?
It's highly exaggerated.
Yeah.
But if you tried to do it accurately, then the layman would not understand it.
Sure.
So the way they did it was perfect in the sense that once you see that, you go, okay, well, that's really like he's a woman, he puts on a dress, he walks around, then he's a kid, and that can happen. But a lot of times those nuances exist in a far more subtle manner. So I did like it. They did add one element that was totally nonsensical. Like that each personality could have different things. Like one has diabetes, but the other doesn't, which means you can control your body chemistry. That was all bogus. But the other parts of it were great. And as a therapist, watching the other therapists, the other thing is boundaries, right? Learning how to hold boundaries when you're a professional. A lot of people get really invested and emotionally invested in cases, and it pulls them in, and it's the worst thing for them and for the client.
Yeah.
And watching this lady spiral into, I was like, no, don't do that. But anyway, yeah, that's my true, not true crime story.
Yeah. Equivalent of like someone going into the basement in a horror story. No, don't do it. Don't go
Yeah,
there.
but I knew it like instinctively. I was like,
Yeah.
no, don't say that. No, no, no. Hold.
Yeah.
But they were very accurate in the portrayal of that interplay. So that part was pretty accurate.
Yeah. Nice. So
Yeah.
getting back to kind of our topic tonight, what do you think are some of the biggest misunderstandings parents have about teen and young mental health today?
So I think they have a lot of misunderstandings. Let's start with technology. I don't consider myself that old. This is the very first time I've logged into this platform. um, and I've seen it, and people are live streaming their games and whatever. But I'll call myself young. I'd like to call myself young. Um, our teenagers are like on the cutting edge of things that we don't even know exist at
Yeah.
this moment. So I think the first misconception is that we know what they're up to, right? It's the biggest misconception, right? Oh, they're on the computer. I can put up a firewall. I can proxy servers are like so 2010, right?
Yeah.
It's like a different. The kids have gotten far more advanced, and so parents assuming that I will learn how my kid is acting and what they're struggling with or have access to via osmosis is a huge issue. And I think it's a pretty significant issue that leads to multiple others. The second misconception, I think, is that people look at teenagehood and go, oh, those are the best years of my life. You're a teen. What do you have going on? The reality is, right, your brain is changing, your body's changing, you're dealing with relationships, dealing with school pressure, peer pressure, family pressure, chaos, social media pressure, body image, shootings, politics, popular opinion, what the celebrities are doing, what the shows are telling you, what to do socially. It's a million things. You're literally working your way uphill, have like snowballs being thrown at you as you're going. It's not an easy time at all,
Yeah.
and it's possibly the most chaotic. At the same time, as your brain is only partially developed, and so it's still learning and processing. So you kind of went from being a kid to being thrown in the deep end of like everything. And so the misconception that teens should be okay, you got it easy, we're taking care of you. What work do you have? What stress do you have? Parents minimize and kind of downplay the mental health aspects of that, because it is true compared to the struggles adults have. Teen issues seem somewhat minuscule, but to a teen in their world, it's everything. And if you miss that, you've really missed the boat in a big way. And the third thing I say is the misconception that you have to handle everything yourself.
Mm.
Um, it's a really big topic, especially also in various communities as well, where it's like we keep this in house, right? Nobody needs to know about this. We'll address it. You will pick yourself up by your belt buckles, and we're gonna make this through. And again, without the proper information, without the proper understanding, without the proper context, without understanding what your kid is facing, you can't do that. And so, kind of knowing that you have to reach out for help, use community, use a village, educate yourself. These are little elements.
Yeah. I know that, especially on the technology front, my 11-year-old came home from school and it's the end of school year and everything. And he's like, my friends and I have been sending memes to each other. He doesn't have a phone. He has a school issued Chromebook. He has a Switch, but you can't message, like, can't freely message on it as far as I know. And so I was like, what do you mean you've been sending memes to your friends? How are you? His classmates and he have created a Google Doc where they just literally paste stuff into this Google Doc. And I'm like, I never would have thought of that, ever. I never, ever would have thought of that. So on his school issued Chromebook, he's able to continue talking to his friends who also don't have phones because they're all 11, or maybe some of them do, but not all of them do. And so like they're all 11 and I'm like,
That is
holy
the
shit.
ADHD creativity.
Yes.
That is it. Yeah. I can't say I didn't think of that, but yes.
Yeah. It's incredible. They are like kids are just so, you talk about technology and different ways to use it. Their brains go places. Like I said, I never would have thought to do something like that. Their brains just go to those places automatically. It's like, oh, how do I do this? Well, there's something on the computer that can make it happen.
Right. Yeah.
And I love to think of myself as very tech savvy.
Right. Yeah, no, the kids are gonna always one up us, that's for sure.
Most definitely. Most definitely. So given all of that, how do you recommend that parents talk to their teens or even to their young adults? Like I said, I have an 18-year-old who just graduated high school, so he's very much a young adult. I know he's still a teenager also because that number has a teen after it, but how do you recommend that parents talk to their young adults and teens about things like depression or anxiety or substance use?
So just to reference back to the teen thing, I always call young adults adolescents of all ages.
Ah,
Um,
I like
you know,
that.
because they're still fixed. Sometimes I say that with adults, but because adults are just older teens, and either they figured out or they haven't. Um, but talking about those topics point blank is very hard.
Mhm.
Almost no teen wants to openly talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, and because we don't talk about it, conversely, the other side of the coin, they seek help from friends who don't have the answers, from strangers on the internet who have other intentions, from Dr. Google, from Dr. ChatGPT, and you don't want them getting answers from those places.
Right.
Um, and so there's sort of this, how do you do that? And it's a good question. So I'm basically summarizing what you're asking. But in essence, it really starts before the problem arises, right? For the most part, and you notice I'm a parent, you're a parent, you have a relationship with your kid, right? Let's just say from when they're born till 10 years old. It's pretty basic, right? When they're happy, they smile. When they cry, they're sad. They know the same thing about you. You communicate, dinner, brush your teeth, take a shower, right? The relationship is beautiful, but very simple. Unless they have some complications, which some kids do. But for the most part, it's simple. And then parents roll right into teenhood, assuming that the relationship will stay the same.
Mm.
But the relationship has to change with the kid. The same thing happens at 18, by the way. Now they move from a kid who's your kid to a teen who's like in sort of a mid-level that you're helping guide. Then they're an adult. And even the shift from 18, just that little space right there. Now we got to reintroduce ourselves. And parents don't recognize that at each phase, you need to reintroduce yourself
Mm.
and reintroduce a new form of relationship because it has to be different. The way you relate to your kid is not the same way you're going to relate to your teen, not the same way you're going to relate to the adult, and so on. All right, my relationship with my dad is completely different from when I was a kid,
Oh yeah.
and then a teenager, and now as an adult. We're different people, and parents don't recognize that. So what I usually tell parents is start early, right? So I call it setting the stage, right? Setting the stage does not mean, hey, let's talk about the birds and the bees, also depression and anxiety. What it means is creating moments that you spend with your kid, whether that's an hour on a Sunday or twice a week where the phones all go down and you sit around the dinner table, or taking them to a baseball game, or whatever it is. What you do is you create these small spaces where they know they're safe and where they know they can talk to you about anything, and where you're not distracted. Like if you're both watching a movie, that's not happening, right? You're just focused forward. But by setting the stage for that, then instead of showing up when something's wrong and trying to then talk with them about that, they already know they can come to you, and you've created that space. And that's really the trick, is recognizing, okay, my kid's going to transition into a new form of relationship. How do I introduce that? Well, you're a
Mhm.
teenager now. Things are going to be different, and here's how they're going to be different. I'm going to try to respect X. I'm going to expect Y, right? A really concrete, thought out plan. And I have a book I'm coming out with that kind of breaks it down. But you establish that, and then you start to establish these little moments. Okay, I just want to have time together. No, we don't do anything. We don't have to talk about anything. We're just going to kick it for 30 minutes once a week, and you have to be consistent. And your phone has to be down. And what you essentially do is create a moment. Then you have to educate yourself, because kids don't come with the manual. At least not. I never saw one fall out in the birth room or anything. But um, and certainly the teen handbook I haven't seen come out yet. So the fact is, you have to educate yourself,
Mm.
right? You got to read books. You got to study. You got to see what's out there. You can't assume that you will know or understand because you've had that. Oh, I've had anxiety. I felt sad before, right? That's sharing your own experiences, as you know, doesn't do anything for teens. They're like, yeah, okay, that was your experience. Thank you. I want to have my own experience, or you don't get it, or whatever. Understanding teens is understanding that you telling them what you've been through is going to help.
Yeah.
But what you can do is educate yourself. And once you have knowledge and you have a space where they can come to, then when they approach you, you have answers. And you can tell them things without bluffing. And they know that you're giving them good advice. And that's where you have that conversation. To kind of come out of the blue and try to have that conversation, really tough. If you've passed that moment and you've missed that boat, so to speak, but you see your teen is struggling, then the answer is to let them and yourself know that you are not the answer, right? Look, I missed something here. I know you're struggling. I can't begin to understand what you're struggling with, but there are professionals who can help. There are people who understand this. I will introduce you. You can pick them. I'll have nothing to do with it. I just want to make sure you have a resource. I'll pay for it. Make sure they send me an invoice, but go,
Yeah.
right? And if you go, I'll incentivize it, X, Y, Z, whatever. But I know you need help, and you may not want to admit to me you need help. You may not want to talk to any of it. It's fine. Talk to them, right? And that's the other alternative if you haven't really achieved this by now. And a lot of parents haven't, right? They become teenagers, now all of a sudden the pot shows up in the backpack and the cutting or the explosive behavior at school, and you have no idea what's going on. And it's also hard because, as you know, the 2/3 of their lives are spent in school. And if the school
Yeah.
isn't capable or compatible or communicating, then that'll be really challenging as well. But either you set it beforehand, or at least you recognize and acknowledge for yourself and then that you don't have the answers, but there's somebody who does.
Yeah. So my oldest does go to a therapist, and whenever we were picking a therapist, I made sure that he was involved in it because he started going when he was much younger. And I made sure that he was involved in that. And like I sat him down with me and said, like, here's all the things that I'm looking for in a therapist for you. Here's what I know you want to talk about. Is there anything else you want to make sure that they specialize in? And we did all of that together. And fortunately, we were able to find a therapist that was great for him. Do you recommend having a team? Like, obviously that worked for us, but in general, do you feel like that's a good thing to do? Do you feel like you should involve your teen whenever you're looking for a therapist? And
100%.
how do you go about that?
Exactly as you did. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, you tell me, look, you can pick, you can find it. Now, you were part of it because your kid needed they can't always pick.
Yeah.
So obviously, you did the right thing. Sometimes when they're older, like I have clients who reach out to me on their own for therapy because their parents said you need it. The parents will call me and say, look, send me the invoice. I'm not going to be involved. Exactly as I'm describing. My kid will call you and just, I'm not going to ask any questions, but please take care of them. Happens a lot. But when they're younger, obviously, you want to sit down, you want to pick, you want to understand, but you do want their buy-in. If you picked somebody and they didn't have buy-in, then they're not going to trust that person. They're going to assume that person works for you. So you really have
that's
to
a good point.
get them involved in you have to get them involved in the process, or you lose everything.
Yeah, that I didn't even think about that. That's a great point, though. Yeah, because if my parents had said, like, here, you're going to go to this therapist, I'd be like, okay, what are they going to tell you? What are they going to tell you about me?
That's right.
Is this your friend? Yeah. Is this your friend that you're sending me to? Yeah.
Happens to a lot of parents. Like, I have a family friend who's a therapist. You can go to them. And I'm like, you said that for real? Like, you told your kid that and you're wondering why? Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Rose is here. Hi, Rose. How are you today? Rose says, how is everyone? I am doing well. I am dealing with some storms, and we were dealing with some power stuff earlier, and I'm dealing with allergies. But aside from that, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Mendi, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I don't see Rose, but I assume you're talking to somebody. I'm doing well. It's a little later for me than it is for you guys.
Yes. But. Yep. So what are some early warning signs that parents should maybe watch for when it comes to behavioral or emotional struggles?
So I have a red flag system, and red flags are not significant by themselves, but only when they add up, right? And there's a couple areas where you look for red flags, right? Let's talk social, emotional, right? Socially, are they withdrawing? Are they not engaging as much? Are they pulling back? Are they not reporting back as much in terms of what's going on with their friends? Or in reverse, have they developed a new set of friends, people you don't know about, going out at different times, right? You can notice flags in certain areas, but just one flag there or two flags, not so significant. But then you talk about emotional, right? Okay, are they more irritated, anxious, down, explosive, standoffish, withdrawn, or the opposite? Again, more of the other side of it. Okay, now they're acting really aloof and outgoing and almost out of control and whatnot. And again, maybe some flags there mean something, maybe not. But now you got two segments that you're looking at. The third is school, right? We talked about being one of the biggest tellers of what's going on. Right. For example, in the summer, parents don't know that their kids are struggling because they don't have the backdrop of school and structure, right? So noticing issues in school, again, could be a flag, could be nothing. But if they're struggling there, now you have 3 different areas where there could
Mm.
be a flag. And then you look at eating habits, right? Um, how they're eating, how they're sleeping. So again, eating more, eating less, how they behave around food, how they deal with sleep, right? Sleep is a number one indicator of performance across every area, period, from sports to medicine to healing to education to whatever. If you don't have sleep, you're done. And so how they're functioning, how they're sleeping, how they're eating. Now you've got 4 segments, you see, that you can look at. And so when it comes to those within each one, maybe not so significant, but they can start to add up. And when they do, now you have to start really considering, okay, there are issues, and what might those issues be? And when you go to a therapist or you look for help, they'll ask you the same question. Okay, where are you noticing issues? And you'll be like, okay, well, here they are, and so on.
Yeah, I think that I didn't. I guess I. It's hard for me to equate like sleep with something that is super super critical to look for patterns, because like you said, during the school year they've got this backdrop of, okay, you got to get up, you got to go to school, you got to go to your activities after school, and then you're going to come home, we're going to have dinner, and then whatever, you're going to talk to your friends for a while, you're going to go to bed on time. In the summer it's a little different. Like right now I am hearing my children out there chit-chatting. Normally my 11-year-old would already be in bed. He would be in bed at 8:30. And so now it's 9 o'clock, and like he's up because it's summer. So how could a parent tell the difference between, okay, this is a structure shift versus this is something to be concerned with because you're not getting as much sleep? But is it just the lack of structure?
Well, your 11-year-old, well, that's what I mentioned about the summer. That's when parents miss the most issues because of the
Yeah.
lack of structure. They assume everything's okay. And that's where we have the most challenges. I assume your 11-year-old is sleeping in tomorrow.
Oh yeah. As much as he will. As
So
much as he will sleep in. I mean, he's an early riser, so.
So in essence, he's making up for the lost sleep,
Yeah,
which you
yeah.
can't do during the year. So that's kind of what I mean. So Tom Brady is going to go to bed at 8:30, right? Every sports player has a bedtime much earlier than you'd imagine, because the body is a functional machine and has to function. And you will notice when kids are sleep deprived because of certain little things like irritation. Sometimes, the day sucked. This was terrible. This person, that person. And the reality is you're tired.
Yeah.
Um, you're overwhelmed. And when the system is tired, every aspect from your brain chemistry down to your physical functioning, even things like anxiety, like if you're tired and your digestive state is off, that can feel like anxiety in your stomach when the digestion is off, and that can cause heart palpitations, which can make you feel anxious, and you don't know why, and you can react to it. A lot of times when I have clients who are struggling intensely in certain areas, sleep can be like right off the bat. I'm like, okay, let's fix sleep. Let's start, like, that is the basics. Let's tune up the engine with sleep. You start there. From there, you can build. And so we'll do things like, and almost everyone has an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or whatnot. You can track your sleep, REM sleep, how much actual sleep are you getting? And if you're not getting good sleep, that's probably why you're not functioning the way you want to. How do we start there? From there, you can build. But people do assume, oh, my kid stays up all night, but he's fine. He's up in the morning. But the reality is he's up, but he's depleted.
Yeah.
He's up, but he's missing the resources he needs to perform. It's the sleep equivalent of being hangry. You know what I mean? Like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just sleep is actually the one thing that determines mental functioning, physical functioning, emotional functioning. Everything is dictated by sleep because that's how our bodies work.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely get more sleep in the summer because I'm not having to get the kids up for school. But I'm like, I sleep
That's
in.
always good.
I sleep in until I have to get up for work, and then that's it.
But teaching a teen to recognize what they're feeling, okay, I must get sleep now. Everything's just like, that's knowing that knowledge alone goes a long way.
Yeah, yeah. And it's hard to recognize, especially if you're like they are right now, they're in the middle of playing Minecraft together. So like it's hard to say, okay, I'm going to stop playing this fun thing and go to bed because I know I need to go to bed. So which I'm sure my 18-year-old will be the one to be like, I'm going to bed.
Right, because they learn, they develop over time.
Yeah. Are there things that parents might be doing unintentionally that contribute to their teens' anxiety or depression?
Yes. Being inconsistent. Inconsistency is the number one challenge, and consistency is the number one key to creating structure. So the saying, do as I say, not as I do, right? Stop cursing, but they're cursing. Go to bed on time, but you don't go to bed on time. Don't talk about people like that, but you talk about people like that. You need to take care of yourself, but they don't take care of themselves. Don't get stressed or explosive, but you get explosive. So parents try a lot of times to take care of their kids because that's how we're wired. But at the same time, we don't take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And we are literally the role model for them to copy, right? Unless you want them to copy other role models, which we don't want. And so inconsistency in follow through, in structure, in behavior is a massive contributor to how our teens respond and how they do. And that means you got to gut check yourself and really take a hard look at yourself. And I'm not even talking about things like parents who aren't in harmony, right? Parents who fight, and then one parent says you can do this, one parent says you can't, and now you're pulling the kid into a fray, and they get to split. I'm not even talking about that. That's already another level of complication. I'm just talking about basics. You have to look in the mirror and say, am I a good role model for my kid? And would my behavior trigger them or myself? And look at that. It doesn't mean you have to admit to your kid that you're doing the wrong thing. You don't have to go that far, but looking at yourself critically is important. And if you're in a couple, then supporting each other in that sense. Hey, look, I know when she says this, it pisses you off and you kind of react. I would do the same thing, but maybe we can have a little hand signal. And when you're frustrated, just step out of the room and I won't undermine you. If you give a consequence, I won't take it away. Right. But at least we're powwowing. Let's go out and talk about the kids once a week for dinner, make sure we got everything on the same page. It's really about that. It's really about consistency and communication. The opposite of that is what makes problems.
Yeah. And it can be, especially because a kid their brain is developing and they're trying to figure life out and they've never been in any given situation before until they've been in it. So it's
correct.
Doubly hard for
you
kids.
are literally their role model.
Yeah.
If they're like, I'm in this new environment, let me look to these people who have been there, and that's you.
Yeah. Yep. How can a parent support their kid without overstepping or micromanaging their mental health journey?
So that's a harder question. So there's a interesting thing. I always tell parents that. Sorry, I hurt my back, so I got to adjust.
You're all good.
I always tell parents. I tried to do my own construction. It was a mistake. I fell on the chair.
Oh no!
Because I didn't use a ladder, and it was stupid.
Oh no!
In any case, that's ADHD for you. The parents will come up to me and say things like, I don't want to check my teen's computer because they're going to get upset.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to look in their room because they're not going to trust me anymore and they're not going to be my friend, so to speak, which is a terrible thing. They're not meant to be your friends. But the reason they're saying that is because they haven't established a system with their teenager. If you want to support your teenager, it involves certain things. For example, yes, you can go to the party. I'll be okay with it. But you struggle with this, that, or the other. I'm giving you the right to call me pain-free, penalty-free if something comes up.
Yeah.
I'm going to support you being a teenager. I don't want you to feel isolated. Conversely, if you mess up and something happens, I also reserve the right, and I'm letting you know now, to take that away until you can earn it back, right? Another example is I'm not going to try to catch you on your computer. If you want to use a computer, you're going to give me the password. And from time to time, I'll log in to check. If everything's okay, fine, right? I reserve the right to check your room. From time to time, I will. If everything's good, right? You may struggle with depression or anxiety. That doesn't give you a right to scream or shout or come down on me. I will respond to appropriate communication. If you need support, let me know. I will support you. But if you don't want my support, I'm not going to fight you for it. I'm here to help, right? So it's really about framing your support in a very structured manner. Teens actually love structure, despite what people may think, despite what they may tell you. And it's easier for them to know what the rules of engagement are than you kind of catching them on the fly, right? For example, I had a teenager who was really upset at his dad because dad would be like, you just lost this whole week of blah, and he never said a word about it. and the dad would like pull this, but then the dad would do that. It was just terribly inconsistent. The mom would give it back. And so when it came to following rules in the house, it was a non-starter, right? And yet he followed rules perfectly in other parents' houses. Why? Because the rules of engagement were very clear. And when he got pulled over for a cop for speeding, he didn't blow up at the cop. The rules of engagement are clear, right? So if you want to support your teen, you need to create structure and rules of engagement and rules of follow through. So there's a system that they can depend on to both support them when they need it, consequence them as a form of support, natural consequence, and give them guidelines to operate within, both for themselves when they want things and for themselves when they want support. I call that a home contract. Again, referencing my book that has yet to come out. But I've been working for like 4 years. I'm almost done. Anyway, you really have to do that. And it can't be something that's like shot from the hip. You actually have to type it up, like write it out. Here are the rules. Here's all the ways we're going to respond. And show it to your team. They can input. Usually, they have parents do it in a Google Doc, and then you have sort of set of rules, and then it's a living document. As things come up, you adjust. Okay, look, this is the third time you came back after curfew. Just understand, we're adding a little caveat here. If you're back after 12, you lose car for 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, whatever it is, based off the system. If you come back and I keep finding stuff in your room, I may have to just take the door off your room. I'm not going to keep like knocking on your door and picking locks. It's my house, right? This is a rule we're adding to this list right now. If you do X, Y, Z, you want to earn, perfect. We're going to put that in there. Right here's a section on whatever, right? But if you really want to be supportive, it has to be concrete and structured, measurable, viewable by all, predictable, and operate as a living system like we do in life, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a legal system or the rules of engagement when you go to work or school, like there are rules that we follow, right? There are things we do because there's a structure designed around it.
I think that predictable part is probably the part that I know my kids would appreciate the most from all parents involved in their lives. I do my best, but I can't control what happens at other houses. So, but yeah, the predictability is it's a big one. Like they want to know what's going to happen if I don't do the dishes tonight, even though I know I'm supposed to do the dishes every day. My mom's going to knock on my door early in the morning and wake me up to do them before I go do what I want to go do. So like just having that consistency and the expectations of if I don't do this, I know what's going to happen. And either I'm willing to deal with the consequence or I'm not, because very similar to like, if I don't leave the house now,
everything.
Yeah, very similar to just like if we're going to go to work and we don't leave the house right now, we're going to be 5 minutes late. Am I willing to deal with the consequences that I know are going to happen if I'm 5 minutes late? Depending on where you work, that might be a big deal. Right. It might not be a big deal. So
correct. You make your choices accordingly.
Yeah. And it's teaching them that skill of, am I willing to deal with these consequences, and not, I guess not having it be everything is life or death, because it's really not. Everything in life is not life or death.
And you're modeling real life so that when they enter the workforce, when they enter these things, that's the way they think. Just to add one element, you said I can't control what people do at other houses. A lot of parents say that, but if you recognize that certain other houses are not holding appropriate boundaries, you have two choices. One is your kid can't go there. Two is you call that parent out. But there is a misnomer, I'm not saying specifically with you, that like, okay, well, when they're not in my house, it's someone else's house. It is what it is. They let them smoke pot. Okay, whatever. I can't. Right? You can. And sometimes holding that boundary shows your kid that you care. Yeah. Shows your kid that you believe these rules are important, not just because you're a mom, but because this will keep them safe. And because it keeps them safe, I don't give a darn who it is. My kid's going to be safe. So either you're going to get with it or not. Like if you go back to like out of preschool and double belting in the car, like if you're not going to put my kid in one seat, then they can't drive with you. I respect you. You want to do it with your own kids, but and I was always very particular about that. If I drive other people's kids and they're like, no, my mom says I can, I'm like, no, I'm not. You're going to buckle the way. Everyone buckles. And if your mom wants to say otherwise, she can say, but in my car, I'm going to do what's safe for everyone in my car at my time. And if my kid's going to your house, your mom's going to make sure everything's good. And my kids will tell me if she doesn't, then it's not going to go back.
Yeah.
So, it's not rude or it's just, you care. And so your care should extend to wherever they are.
No, totally agree. And I'll clarify, I'm talking about co-parenting with another parent in a situation.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Very different.
Yeah, very different. Yes.
Very
friend friend
Still
house is
challenging.
totally different.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Challenging in a different
Still
way.
challenging, but
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a whole other podcast.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Yeah, we could spend way longer if we get into that level of things. But yeah, I mean, and you, if you have a great co-parenting relationship, you can bring those things up. If your co-parenting relationship isn't that great, as mine have not been, then it's much more difficult, and it makes it more difficult on the child. Mostly is the thing, because like if they know what they're gonna what to expect at my house, and they go over to the other parent's house, and it's just not consistent, no matter what. If it's not consistent with me, or if it's not consistent overall, which in our case it's just not consistent overall, it's just very difficult. It's a really difficult situation.
Sure.
So.
That's a different, absolutely different.
Yeah.
Another podcast, anyways.
Yeah,
but
sometimes
definitely I'll pull two parent. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like with friends and everything, I talk to the parents. I talk to the parents all the time. I'm like, hey, just so you know, here's the deal with this one, and here's what my expectation of him is, and if it isn't this way, please let me know. And he's gonna let me know if anything happens, because he's a tattletale. Like, so.
Yeah. That's the way to do it. That's exactly how to do it. Yeah. That's awesome.
So if a parent is not familiar with the mental health system, like I've been in therapy myself. So whenever it was time for my kid to go into therapy, it was easy for me to be like, okay, well, let's get this handled. But if someone doesn't have that familiarity, what's the first step they should take whenever they realize that their kid is struggling?
Ask for help. It's that simple. Go online, find someone, ask for help. There's a lot of people who know what they're doing, who've been trained, who have experience. Don't go to your friend or your friend's friend or your father or somebody else and be like, yeah, here, tell me what to do. Even your friends who've had other kids who struggled. No. You go to a professional who is unbiased, who is trained, who is experienced in this field. If you don't like them or you can't relate to them, then go for another one. Try 3.
Yeah.
But do that. And if you're looking for resources, you can usually start with the school, and they'll usually have a list of referrals they work with. Or psychologytoday.com is wonderful.
Yep.
Those are kind of my 2 top ways of going about it.
Yeah. I like the idea of going to the school, because they're going to have the very local resources, and hopefully folks that they know have worked with other students as well.
Correct.
But yeah, Psychology Today is great, and they have all kinds of filters and everything that you can filter down with. So whether that's looking for like a specialty that they have, or looking for, do they take my health insurance? There's all kinds of stuff you can do on there. So it's great.
Or what language they speak. I mean, it's got everything. Yeah.
Yep. Is there anything you wish more families knew before starting the process of seeking treatment or seeking that help?
Just the education piece. I think people, again, I wish people knew that there's so much that I wish they knew what they didn't know. That's long and short. So many people don't know what they don't know. And we enter this aspect the same way we enter a lot of other things in our lives. Oh, we got it. I got this. I figured it out. And with that same bravado and confidence, and it's just not the same thing. And recognizing that this is probably more complex than even your day job, and has far greater reach and repercussions if you get it wrong.
Yeah,
would change everything. Like if you knew you were like the ninja warrior, like hopping on these little things and trying not to fall in the water, you'd go slower. You wouldn't just get a run in it, right? You'd analyze the different things and figure out your structure. You'd probably train for a while, get yourself educated. But people assume, I go to the gym so I can handle a ninja course, and then they're in the water, and that's what you don't want.
I like the idea of kind of comparing it to that. You would go and you would prepare yourself for something else. That's great. That's fantastic.
That just came to me. It was good. I'm gonna use that again.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
So you've got a family who has sought help. They've found help one way or another. In your opinion, in a therapeutic setting, what works best when it comes to building trust with teens?
Are you saying the family and the teen are in therapy, or just the teen?
No, I would say just the teen. Although, like, maybe family situation also. I was referring to just the teen, like between the teen and the therapist. How do you build that trust?
That's a very nuanced question. It's there's obviously, like, I can start quoting clinical methodology. To me, the first thing, and I brought this up toward the beginning, is kind of counterintuitive: boundaries. A lot of therapists want to immediately find a connection. That's how they think it's supposed to work. Oh, you play music? I was a musician. Right? You do this? Oh, I do that. And they try to bond over shared experiences, and that's the biggest mistake you can make because you're not there to bond over shared experiences. Um, Essentially, you're just creating a different form of relationship, which is not a therapeutic one. And you actually lower the bar for how they view you. Oh, we're both musicians. Okay. Now, how do you think about them as a strong therapeutic presence? So, number one is boundaries, especially with teenagers. Here's the time frame. We're not going to get too close. No huggy high fives. We're going to stay on topic. When teens ask me about my own personal story, I don't share. I said that's my story. Sometimes there's something called the clinical use of self, where you'll pick a specific instance at a specific time and give something that makes sense for that moment and still not in its entirety. But it's really about creating structure and holding boundaries, and then supporting the teen in exploring whatever it is that they are struggling with. That's how you build trust. If you are trying to change them, tell them what to do, fix them, give them advice and guidance, connect with them on a personal level, you're just like anybody else in their life. Whatever, okay, you're trying to be my friend. I don't want to be your friend. You're trying to tell me what to do. You're not my parent, right? You're trying to. Are you judging me, right? All you need to do as a therapist to build trust is to show them that you are not there to do anything to them. You are there simply to support them to get to their goals. Your goal is whatever their goal is, and that you will be a resource. Okay, you hate mom and dad, and you want to get off and be on your own and live on your own. Cool. Well, this is doable, I'm sure. It's going to be hard. There's a lot of elements to it. I don't know if you've ever thought about living on your own, paying your own. You're not going to say it the way a parent will. Let me help you with that. Let's talk this through. What'll it take, right? And as you break that down, they start to come to their own realizations. You're not telling them you can't. You're being stupid. You're not going to afford it. You're going to be homeless in a month, right? That's not how it goes. Your goal is to help them get to where they want to get to, but by giving them advice and guidance, or not even advice and guidance, but just reflecting for them so they can work through what they're trying to work through. And that's where there's trust, because they don't need to trust or not trust. You're just operating the way they need it. So they don't need to trust you. When it comes to telling you certain things, again, you tell them very simply, which I do. Anything you say is confidential unless I think you're a danger to yourself or others, and you maintain that confidence. That's the only real element of trust that I think becomes relevant. And if I do have to tell a teen about that, or bring something up that I think they said which does warrant me saying, I'll be transparent. Look, you just said something I will have to bring up, right? And sometimes I'll tell a teen everything is confidential, but there's certain things I think you may have to bring up to your parents, and I'll help you with that, right? So that's really the only element of trust. If you're doing your job the way you're supposed to, then trust is not a factor, because they're your client, and they have essentially hired you to be their sounding board, and you're also using your skills to be a smart sounding board.
Yeah.
But that's really what it is.
I like the idea of it being you're kind of that sounding board. I very early, whenever I started doing this podcast, I had someone describe it as the therapist is just there. You hand them your bullshit and they hold it for you while you sort it out into a usable form.
That's exactly what that's precisely what it is. Yeah. And occasionally point out the fact that your hands are dirty. What
Yeah.
can we do to help you with that?
Yeah.
Right? Let's think of some ideas together. At least with teenagers.
Yeah.
But that's a perfect description. Yes. Hold my bags while I go through them.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. How can parents best support a young adult who's moved out but is clearly still having some struggles?
I'm going to say the same way. I'll add one factor. Teenagers asking for help is like a non-starter almost ever, especially when they've now moved out of the house and it's all this confidence. And I'll give you an example. A young person that I dealt with from a minority community that really struggled with a lot of elements, and this individual was at least at the time non-binary. They're kind of figuring out where they stand in their sexual identity. Parents had no experience with this. Part of a minority group that does not recognize or accept this. Part of a community that, well, to hell with that. And as much as they wanted to try to understand their kid, in their area among their people was a non-starter. And we worked on that for a while, but eventually this kid got upset and left, moved out. Even though normally he wouldn't have done that.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have the confidence to. But in the face of this, and I say he because at the moment that's how he identifies. In the face of this, he did. He stepped up, stepped to his game, moved out, went to college. Now, the parents were like, okay, well, he's disconnected from us. He's cut us off. What do we do? And I said, well, you let him know that the door's open. He's left, and he assumes you're in a fight, and the door is closed. And he will then lock his door and put extra bolts on it. And what you have to do is just say, let him know continuously, you're here. You'll do your best to support him, although you're allowed to hold your own boundaries and have your own ways of thinking, just like he wants to be accepted. You want to be accepted for what you think. Everyone has to be accepted for the way they think. And as long as no one's killing each other. And just reminding him again and again and again, we're here, we love you, the door's open.
Mm.
And that's really the best thing they can do. And in their situation, to remind him of that, they sent him gift packages every 2 weeks. Just like, yeah, here's this, thinking of you, here's some pictures, here's what's going on. Just staying connected.
Yeah.
Right? And recognizing that the world out there is a hell of a whole, like, it's a hard world.
Yeah.
And people will be cruel. And the one thing teens don't recognize as they transition to adults a lot of times is that the people who will be there for you the most in the end of the day, when everyone else screws you over and moves on and focuses on themselves, is going to be family, hopefully.
Yeah.
Not in every situation, but in many of them. And if you keep that door open when all hell breaks loose and no one is there for them, they will come back and talk to you. And that's where it's important. Don't just assume they're off, they're good. I'll call them in a month. When they call me, I'll talk to them, but stay connected. And especially in today's day and age, it's just, there's so much craziness everywhere.
Yeah.
Let them know it's okay to be weak. Not be weak. It's okay not to be weak. I'm trying to find the word. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
It's normal. It's expected. It's not weakness. That's all. It's kind of like you function as a trampoline, right? They come back, a little back, then put them back, and that kind of thing.
Oh, my parents would love that comparison because all three of their kids out and in and out and in and out and in. It's like,
yeah,
it's all right.
As long as there's the tension, as long as there's a little tension to push them back up,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
That's all.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have the bounce.
Absolutely. Now you're a parent. How has your professional background shaped the way that you approach parenting?
Oh, geez. It has made me over analytical.
Fair.
It has given me the ability to see. Normally, parents, the kids have the advantage of like teaching their parents what it means to be tricky and navigate things, and I suck because I'm like 6 steps ahead, and it doesn't really doesn't give them the same opportunities to I guess try things out as teenagers because I kind of know where they're going and what they're thinking and what they're going to say. At the same time, it makes me a good parent because they do feel open enough to speak to me about things. I had sort of a split thing where like mom would take care of them until, in the early stages because she was a preschool teacher. Like I'll take over when they become like, teens. and now that's what's happening. My oldest is turning 14 and next one's 11 and like, oh, they're shifting. But I think it's just given me an opportunity. And I go back to the word boundaries is the way I think and act is just the way I've conditioned myself over the years. And so the way I react is very specific and very structured and very non-emotional and very consistent in a way that's, I'm not going to call it cold and calculated, but just very specific. And it just comes out of sort of habit. So, which becomes a challenge when when you have a significant other and maybe they get emotional, but and you're so locked in to like keeping it all in a box, which isn't good either.
Yeah.
But that you respond differently. Like I'm not trying to make you look bad in any way. I promise you. I can do this right here. I got it. But yeah, I mean, it's been that. It hasn't given me all the answers or all the secrets. It's definitely made me incredibly self-critical, and most importantly, I've seen so many really bad things that I'm always worried. And that's really when you've seen a lot, you worry a lot.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's a blessing and a curse. So far, it's been helpful, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Has it gone the other way yet? You said
God willing.
Your oldest is only 14, and you the next one's 11. So has it gone the other way yet, where something you've encountered in parenting has impacted the way that you kind of deal with things professionally?
Not yet.
Not yet.
He hasn't brought anything up that I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
I mean, thank God.
Yeah.
I suspect he will. or hopefully he won't. But in any case, right now everything he's doing is things I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank God for that. I have had some troubles with the schools though. Some of these schools are pretty not good.
We had
But
some issues with one school this year that I'm like, really, guys, really? Is this the
right,
way
and
that,
they
that
shape
this
your
should have been dealt with? Like, come on.
correct, and they're going to shape your kid. Like my kid is fine until you did this,
Yeah.
and now you're actually causing him to withdraw. You know, some guy, a teacher, actually physically assaulted my kid, and they wouldn't do anything about it. It's crazy. I got
Oh my
CPS involved,
gosh.
but till the end of the year, my son doesn't go to that class. I don't.
Yeah.
We just don't let him go. But feeling isolated from your friends for 3-4 months, that can impact how you feel about things. So
Hmm.
I had to overcompensate in a lot of areas. But anyway, you get the point. The point is that
Yeah.
there's a lot of other things that can shape the dynamic that you have to kind of control.
For sure. For sure. We're coming up on the last couple of questions, but you mentioned your back hurting. Do you need to get up and stretch or anything?
I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good. I'm good. I
All
just
right.
as I was adjusting, I was feeling it.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure because if you need to get up and stretch or whatever, it's all good.
No, no, no. I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, well, we are coming up on the last couple of questions. So, folks who are here in the chat with us, if you have any other questions you want to ask, feel free to drop them in and we'll make sure to get them addressed. But what is your favorite life hack?
My favorite life hack. So I read this. I can't remember her name, so I apologize. If you have ADHD like me, or you're an overthinker like me, making decisions is hard, and you question your decisions even before you make them. And if you're intelligent, which I believe I am as well, you look at the aspects of all your decisions. Well, this could mean this, that could mean that, that. And I forgot what it's called, but it's just give yourself 20 seconds to make a decision and make it, and then don't look back. And it's interesting because it actually, initially, you can maybe mess up a couple times, but to some extent, you know what you need to do. And you kind of know what the best decision is. And I just don't remember the name of the lady or the book, but it's like you make that decision and that's it. It's done. Box is closed. You don't overthink it. You move forward. If you mess up, you know for next time. I mean, we're not talking about cutting wires in a detonator. We're talking about life decisions, basic stuff. But we can really get hampered by decision making
Mm-hmm.
and overwhelmed by decision making. Our kids get hampered by decision making, overwhelmed by all the choices. College choices, for example, right?
Oh,
Okay, you
yeah.
got 20 colleges. You're picking three. You got 5 minutes to pick your top three. From three, we got three, right? We can look at the pros and cons of each. But if you got 20 different files open in your head and they're all spinning, I have a thing here that says my brain has too many tabs open.
It's
But like
true.
that's what that is. And that can also crash your system. Just having too many things open can cause you to be irritable, anxious, and upset, and confused, and depressed. You should write down a piece of paper and do a brain dump. It's another life hack, the brain dump, right? But yeah, the decision-making thing for me has been kind of a crazy life hack that I never thought about, but is incredibly effective.
Yeah. I feel like I've done something similar with the kids before because I'll be like, where do you want to go for dinner? If it's a day that we're going to eat out, where do you want to go for dinner? And so
right?
I'll be like, okay, scratch that question. Here's 3 choices. Y'all eliminate 2. Like each of you eliminate 1,
Right.
And then
Right.
the other one that we do a lot is I'll say, pick a number and then they'll pick or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, that means this one. And then if they all go, oh, then I'm like, okay, so you really wanted the other one and you just couldn't make that decision. And that's fine. We'll go with the other one. Like all good. You felt that disappointment in your chest and now we're going to work from there. It's
Answered.
fine. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So the next question, Bite Mark would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
You told me this would happen.
Yes.
So I'm from Baltimore. Edgar Allan Poe, quote the Raven, Nevermore. Nevermore is I'd say my top. Also, I'm a big fan of the football team, and it's also about a guy losing his mind, which is which is Edgar Allan Poe also, who is, I think, schizophrenic and an alcoholic and showed up dead in Baltimore, just on the street somewhere, where he's buried. So he was a fascinating mental health situation.
Yeah, and that's a great poem too. It always makes me think of did you ever watch The Simpsons? There's a Simpsons episode where I think Homer was the Raven or Bart was the Raven and Homer was the guy. I don't remember, but it's been a while. It's been a while since I saw that episode. It's one of their earlier episodes, probably season 1. But it always makes me think of that. It's hilarious. And it's the actual poem. Like it is actually the Raven poem, but they act it out with the characters. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
I'll have to look that up.
This is time for the magic moment. Oh, dang it. Here we go. All right, magic moment. So if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
That a mental health issue is a deficit. So, like I said, with ADHD, people see it as a deficit. It's not. Even depression can be harnessed. Anxiety can be harnessed. A lot of what makes people really, really good, say in the military, for example, is the ability to feel fear and anxiety, but push through it, right? If you didn't feel fear and anxiety, you get killed pretty quick because you just walk into anything. But if you feel fear and anxiety and you learn how to harness that, well, now you can be a quick acting Navy SEAL and do what you got to do really quickly and really efficiently. People assume they're all like cold blooded. You can't be, right?
Yeah.
In order to be reactive in a situation, you simply can't be. And I actually watched an episode with a Navy SEAL going through a bunch of stuff, and he's like, no, I feel fear. That's what drives me. It's the fear. So recognizing that they don't have to hinder you, and also looking at the counter side is where there are benefits. A lot of people view mental health as it's a deficit. That they're ruined that way. They're just broken, or this is how they are, and the people, I'm so sorry to hear that. It needs to be viewed differently. That doesn't mean it doesn't need to be worked on. It doesn't mean that it doesn't pose challenges. It doesn't mean that it's not something that is there and that can interfere with daily living. It just means it doesn't have to be a deficit.
Yeah. And if we could just blast that into everybody, that'd be great. That understanding. Please, please, please.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I am
back in the day when we didn't understand mental health, people developed skills around these different things, right? They fit into different positions based off how their mental expression was, and that was just interesting how that played out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, I'm going to post your socials one more time for everybody to reach through and connect with you. And while I'm doing that, I will just open it up to you. If there's anything, you said you're working on a book. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but if there's anything that you got going on, anything you didn't get to mention, I'll just give you the floor while I do these couple of posts here for everybody.
No, I think I talked myself through. I'm hopefully finishing the book. You mentioned I run treatment centers for teenagers. Working on a project to support people in the TV and film industry. There's a lot of mental health stuff going on set, which is interesting. Just generally staying busy like that. Doing podcasts, doing TV. I did get back into music, so I'm doing some recordings.
Nice.
Again, ADHD. I learned Spanish and started singing Spanish for fun.
Oh, that's cool. What do you sing? Yeah. Do you play an instrument?
I'm a singer.
Okay.
I play guitar, but I'm a singer. I mean, that's where my skill set is. So I put out some stuff on Spotify. I'm like, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's it. All
right.
That's my goodness. Well, I appreciate you having me on this.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me here today. This conversation was really great and very timely for me with a teenager who's about to go off to college. So I appreciate that from a personal perspective. I really appreciate you joining me on here for sure. Well, folks who are still here with us, give me a moment to disconnect with Mendi offline, and I will be right back. Stick around. But Mendi,
I'm gonna get some sleep.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure.
Take care. All the best.
All right, thanks.
Bye.